Happening now, we'd like to welcome our viewers across North America and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room for Tuesday, March the 13th, 2018. Yes, we are changing a little bit with our dates and times, but I'm excited to be starting a series with some amazing guests. And so I am Wes Fryer, coming to you from Oklahoma City, where I am the Director of Technology at the Cassidy School, joined on the East Coast, Southeast United States, in Florida, by Jen Carey. Jen, how are you? And how is life in Florida? Because at least we're not in the Northeast, I guess, getting walloped by a third, winter storm. We can give thanks for that.
Seriously. Winter in Florida, winter in Miami especially, is pretty easy to handle. We had a high today of 70 and a low of 52.
Nice.
So that's how we do winter in South Florida.
Awesome.
I'm okay with it.
And you are is it Director of Special Projects Innovation?
Yeah.
Did you have one of those jobs where you got to make your own title kind of thing?
No, I got a job that my position has evolved to such that it doesn't fall under one department or one category. They're taking advantage of my tech skills in communications and advancement in admissions, as well as some special one-on-one projects for the head of school. And so we just decided we call it that for now and figure out the details a little bit later. Very good. Everything from marketing to data analytics and more has been under my purview this year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we are here usually on Wednesday nights, and Jason Neiffer is usually here with me, but Jason is at that crunch time for his dissertation, where he has wisely said, this little hobby podcast shouldn't be the priority right now. So he's taking about 4 weeks off to get that thing done and hopefully defend shortly. And so we've got a series of guests, and Jen has been on the show before, and I'm excited that the Atlas conference is coming up in April, and we could talk a little bit about that.
Yes, please. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Do you know who our keynote speaker is?
I'm not sure.
It is Donna Oram.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, she is the CEO of NAIS.
That's right.
So excited that she's going to be giving our keynote. She is amazing. She's brilliant. She's been with the organization for many years. So I'm when they announced it, I got giddy in the boardroom.
And were you a founder of Atlas? Were you there at the beginning? Because it's a 4-year-old or 5-year-old organization.
It's 4 years old. No, I'm not a founder. The founders are Stuart Posen, Kelsey Vrooman, and Gabe Lucas. I was part of the inaugural board expansion. So I came on the board about a year later. And it's been really amazing. It's a great organization. The three of them had a magnificent vision. Sarah Hannawald, our executive director, has done a fantastic job executing it. The new board chair is Jason Ramsden out at Ravenscroft, who has just in the few months of his tenure has taught me so much about leadership, about the role of EdTech in schools, the collaboration. If you get the chance to be on the executive board of an organization like Atlas, what can I say? Definitely take it. It's been a great experience for me.
Awesome. Well, we have a wonderful technology director group in the Midwest. And so I had heard about Atlas, probably right away as people were talking about professional development. So last year in Burbank was my first opportunity, and the way things have shaken up in my situation, I kind of have one professional development event outside these meetings that we do have with the regional tech directors. And so Atlas is it. So I'm actually
so excited
too, because originally my wife Shelly was going to come as well and help present. She had to take about a week off as her father passed away, and so we had to change plans. But our daughter's going to get to come, and we're going to get to visit 3 schools, take some vacation time, and visit Shenandoah and Emory and Henry. And in between is the University of Virginia, which I just consider that the idyllic academic village. When I was at Texas Tech, I got to visit Glen Bull, and we had a connection there, and just like, it just seems to be, such an amazing place. So anyway.
All great schools. I guess as a Virginian, my heart's a little more into UVA.
Okay.
But yeah, and Atlas in DC, it's going to be at the same time as the Cherry Blossom Festival. So if you have time to stay a little later or come a little earlier, absolutely, it's great. And spring, hopefully the weather warms up a little. Spring in DC is normally quite nice.
You never know what you're going to get. So,
That is
well, hey, we want to welcome Scott Summer, who's in our chat room. We are going to jump into our articles tonight. We
great.
are typically talking about the latest in technology news and putting an educational spin on that. And so I actually grabbed 4 or 5 of Jen's recent articles that she has tweeted, and several others that we missed last week. So we'll kind of jump into that. But if anybody would like to follow along, in addition to being in the chat room, if you happen to be live, but most folks will tune in later, we have all these links at edtechsr.com/links. And we've got the Google Doc there. And I see that Jen is there. And we will just kind of see where we want to go with this. So is there an article you would like to start with? We'll just open it up to whatever you want to talk about.
So something that was very close to my heart. I'm here in Miami. We're maybe 40 miles south of Douglas High School. So we felt that pretty powerfully. And I have to say, as an educator, both as an educator and an educator that works in tech, there's, in addition to the tragedy, what really struck me is how these kids have just effectively harnessed social media. The JSTOR article, What Parkland Tells Us About Teens and Social Media, I'll tell you, there's one thing that these kids just made me eat my words on. I was I very commonly would say, hey, just because kids know how to post a tweet or share an Instagram doesn't mean they know how to use social media effectively. We have to teach them. And I was wrong. Completely wrong. These kids are using social media in really effective, powerful, galvanizing ways. And if you haven't had a chance to see what they're doing online, it's really quite powerful. And so that one is probably the one that I've been sharing the most, not just on Twitter, but with some of my colleagues and some of my peers. I thought it was pretty powerful.
Absolutely. And, I think it speaks to how articulate those students are that, yeah, we had, some different voices saying these are not even, real kids. These are actors, and just, the articulate way that they were able to speak out, and have been an advocate for student voice and for journalism and for students developing their ability to publish. And I think, of course, one of the ugliest things about this is how they've had to deal with such trolling and such yucky sides of social media. I'm fortunate, and hopefully most educators are, to really not live in that dark world of trolling and social media, but to really love Twitter and the chance that it gives us to connect and learn together. And so when we hear about this dark side, I'm thankful that, for instance, our daughter, who gave a TEDx talk, hasn't been on the cover of the New York Times, because I think if you do get catapulted into mainstream national attention, that's an invitation in a lot of cases to be trolled. But the ways that the kids have responded and have used the platform, and have effectively brought about some change, right? Because Florida, you all had some gun control legislation, I think. Was it signed by the governor this week?
Yeah, and we have a governor who has been pretty anti all forms of gun control. And so they initiated quite a bit of change very quickly, not to the extent that the kids were wanting, and they plan to continue their political agitation. But it has had some effect. And just to speak quickly to your statement about trolling, you're absolutely right about how disgusting some of this has been. I'll tell you, one of the things I've been trying to do to help these kids amplify their voices is I've gone onto the comments section and made an effort. I spend, 10 minutes a day just reporting people for abuse and harassment.
Wow.
And that's not very much time, but you don't have to be the victim to report abuse or harassment. And targeted harassment is a violation of Twitter's terms of service. So if you're wondering, other than sending, which is great, a supportive tweet back, if you really want to help amplify these kids' voices and make them feel safe online, just spend a few minutes every couple of days or every day if you can, and just report the people who are abusing them online. It does make a difference.
That's fantastic. I haven't blogged about this yet, but I've just had a couple of experiences that I think show how YouTube as well as Twitter are trying to crack down and sort of tighten the screws on some things. I set up a new Twitter account and was quickly flagged as possibly a bot, and it was frozen, and I had to, do some extra verification things. And then it was a little bit amusing. On my school YouTube channel, I audio recorded a digital citizenship presentation and then published that whole hour and a half on there, and it got flagged as violating, community guidelines. I think because it wasn't a video. Anyway, it was a strike, and I had appealed it, and then it was taken, it was released, and it was all fine. But the platforms are definitely trying to use algorithms. And then I think we talked on the show, Facebook was like doubling the number of folks, like from 20,000 to 40,000 that were going to have eyes on these kinds of things. But that's a great suggestion. And that would be a good blog post and good advocacy out in the educational world to say that's a very tangible thing that we can do to try and support these kids, and also to try to help our platforms figure out how to navigate through this, right? Because I think we have a long way to go and a lot to figure out in terms of how we can avoid the extremists and the trolls from defining the conversation, from chasing people off of the platform. And
you're right, and especially marginalized groups, so women, people of color, and of course children. People who are especially vulnerable to this type of abuse.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. Well, under the same headline of social media, there's also an article relating to this called YouTube, the Great Radicalizer. And this was the New York Times by Zeynep Tufekci, I think who is from Turkey. This was from March 10th.
Yeah,
this is pretty fascinating. And what she explores in here is how you can take YouTube and be watching, some topic, but because of related videos, you will quickly start to see, an extreme view of that, whether it's on the conservative side or it's on the liberal side. And so her contention in this article is that the platform itself really leans towards radicalization and towards the extremes.
Right.
And so I don't know. Is that I personally feel like a beneficiary of YouTube's algorithms. Really enjoy Apple TV and the recommendations, and I'm feeding the machine pretty regularly with likes. I know that they just track what you watch, but I do pay attention to whether or not I'm logged in with my normal channel, which is where I watch the most stuff. And so, I've ended up watching some great Ray Kurzweil artificial intelligence things and stuff about, Google, some themes that we talk about on our show as far as technology. So I don't feel like I have been radicalized, but have you experienced that or what, and I guess we could think about how this impacts us in terms of school too, because this is the algorithm that Google coders have written. So it's something that could be.
And something to think about, anytime somebody's talking about YouTube, they're talking about Google. And I think we forget how powerful Google is as an information access site. Means I can't think of the right word. It's
number 2 biggest search engine in the world.
YouTube is 2 and Google is 1.
Yeah.
So there are primary means of accessing information. There's benefits and drawbacks to those algorithms. And I think there needs to be, it seems like human eyes need to fix part of it. So for example, shortly after the teens started getting on Twitter, I'll use Twitter as an example, but there's thousands of others. One of the trending topics was hashtag Parkland hoax. And that stayed up for several hours because it was trending, but a human being had to make the determination that should not be trending. And that's a discussion, right? Because it gets into, even though these are private companies, there's a lot of discussion about the role of censorship on them. I know Facebook has gotten in trouble because they have been actively trying to make people happier on their platform. So trending subjects that are negative, even if they're incredibly important, often don't show up under trending. So a terrorist attack, for example, where people might need the information. I don't know that we've found a happy medium. I think the human element and judgment is always going to be critical, but then that's also flawed. I thought I think we've all run into the problem, whether it's on YouTube or Google or Amazon shopping history, where something has popped up related to something we've looked at that we didn't want to pop up.
Right.
Usually at the most inopportune time.
Yeah.
And so I think they just haven't figured them out. And these platforms are trying to be edgy, trying to be not so much on the fringe, but trying to be open. But then where do you draw the line on openness, discussion, and hate speech and conspiracy?
Well, one of the big shifts I think we've seen happen, and this was a result in part of the testimony that happened before the US Congress at the end of last year by representatives of the platforms of Google, of Twitter, and Facebook, is we have started to see the platforms, step up to the responsibility, which I believe that they do have.
Right.
Because it's interesting, right? If you're an ISP, if you're just providing the connectivity, that is quite a bit different, especially if we're following net neutrality, which is another, issue. But, you are sending the packets. But when algorithms come to play with a news feed and with recommendation engines like YouTube has and things like that, I think there is a great deal more responsibility. And so in what we hear, Zuckerberg talking about and the way they're trying to address this, they're walking a line, right? Because the longer we're on YouTube, the more money Google makes. The longer we're on Facebook, the same thing.
Right.
And those companies, unlike Amazon, which wants to just get us to buy things to ship to our house, I mean, they are really advertiser driven, and they're competing for our attention.
Mhm.
It reminds me of talking about this. Logan Paul, who had the video of the suicide forest and all that, and how that stayed up for almost 24 hours, and it was actually not taken down by YouTube. He took that down. Was that kind of thing to happen again today? Hopefully, Google and YouTube specifically are going to be more assertive about taking that kind of thing down. But the quantity of information here, I mean, I think perhaps I'm hopeful for artificial intelligence not to just completely come to our rescue, but that algorithms and machine learning are we know they're going to continue to get better, and that those, along with human eyes, can really assist in all of this, because especially trending, right? You'd think there's got to be people sitting with eyes on, all right, what's trending? Is that legit? Because that's going to snowball as people see, oh, what is Parkland hoax, and they click on that.
Right.
Are you guys at school, in terms of computer science, doing some things with ethics or digital citizenship, or how does that fit in with the kinds of things you all are doing with students?
So we're having some discussions about that right now. We currently have a pretty traditional digital citizenship program. Although we're definitely rethinking it. And I think we're trying to be more mindful about what kids should be learning in the EdTech realm. That's why I really like the article on here about cyber hygiene, right?
Yeah. Well, why don't we go to that one? You want to talk about that one next?
And what I loved about it is it moves away. And one of the things that I find frustrating on that stranger danger, internet is a dangerous place message that we send to our teens too, not just teens, but younger kids, to such an extreme degree, but that I actually think it's somewhat harmful, that we ignore a lot of the very real threats that kids have online, having to do with security and cybersecurity. And so EdTech, was Education Week, highlighted that they're starting to teach kids about really important things like phishing or identity theft, all of which are now have hit a crazy peak. I'll tell you a story. My boyfriend runs his own business. He woke up one morning and his cell phone service had been turned off. And he was like, that's really weird. And he checked his email and had this email that he had a bank transfer that had gone through. He had been a victim of identity theft. And many of us, by the way, have been with Experian and all these other things. They had ported out his phone number and used it to gain access to his bank account. And that kind of stuff is becoming more and more common. And people don't tend to realize that this is a problem until it happens to them. And so teaching kids about the realities of security, not just like have 80 million passwords, remember what they are, using things like a password manager, like 1Password, learning how to identify a phishing attack, for example, learning why it's important, even though it's a little annoying, to enable things like two-factor authentication. All of this stuff is really more vital than we realize. And what I find shocking is how many adults as well as kids are kind of ignorant on those things. You probably hear this a million times. The latest iOS update comes out. How many people do you know who are running like 2 versions behind, maybe more? And they tell me it's because of the security. They think it's more secure. And I have to point out, no, you need to update. Like, don't do it like the second it comes out. Wait an hour, and if it doesn't brick anyone's phones, update. You need to. I bricked my phone once for that update. But we have to start teaching them about the realities of cybersecurity, especially as our information's out there more and more.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't know if you've seen this digital citizenship website we launched at school in January. It's digcit.us, but it is focused on short videos and then questions that mainly our middle and upper division faculty can use during advisory to talk with students about issues. And we haven't gotten the contribution part of that going, but part of the idea is that when an article comes out or a situation, the Parkland social media is actually excellent, right? That's an excellent case study to talk about the realities of social media, I love that, about what we can practically do to be able to report and actively assist in reducing trolling and some of that negativity. So students could create a narrated slideshow that would be short and then contribute that, because of the dynamic nature of this. The Logan Paul thing came up because I had not really heard much about that, but way over half, probably closer to 3/4 to 90% of our high schoolers and middle schoolers knew about that. And then the adults are just kind of like, what are we talking about? Right. So there's things that are coming up in popular culture, on social media, that, like pranking culture, that's a whole thing that is good to talk about, the responsibilities that may go with if you're sharing that, and it is, where you draw the line with pranking, etc. So anyway, I am totally on that bandwagon, and it's been something pretty exciting at our school in terms of, seeing where wellness and health and concerns about screen time and those things, can come together with a lot of other topics, but we need to find time to talk about those, and then to empower and equip our teachers with confidence to be able to have that discussion and not say, well, I'm just going to wait and let the technology teacher or let the school counselor or psychologist or somebody else handle that. So I think that's not what I'm presenting at Atlas, or I won't be presenting about that, but I think this is a flag and a banner I want to keep on not only working on at our school, but the presentations for parents that I did a couple weeks ago were well received. And you're exactly right. There's a lot of parents, when it comes to password management, two-step verification, they're not there, right? And so we've required all of our faculty and staff, and we did this over a year's time, to finally everyone's on two-step if they're an employee, and we're doing more single sign-on and things like that. So it's stuff that, with a story like yours, definitely touches home when you talk about identity theft and, money taken. And I can imagine, I mean, if your house is actually burglarized, I'm sure the trauma of that, maybe you never even lived down. I don't know what that looks like for cyber. But at least
he was quite lucky. He was able to get everything back fairly quickly, and including, it highlights the importance of your phone number. In fact, they're saying now that phone numbers are the new social security numbers.
Yep. And
his big fear was he wasn't going to get his number back, because that was his business line. He'd had that number for a decade or more. And there were just additional security measures he wasn't even aware of, because someone walked in with his name and social security number and walked out with a new phone. And so it turns out now, and I enabled it as well, I now have a 6 digit passcode for my phone for any changes that I make.
Are you all on T-Mobile, or who are you guys with?
We're on T-Mobile.
Right, because T-Mobile, and this is something a tech director, so I was in Ohio giving a presentation about digital citizenship. A tech director here in Oklahoma had seen a Reddit thread about how T-Mobile, because of the Equifax breach and those socials going out, that some people were saying you needed to, call T-Mobile and get this additional PIN, because if you didn't, then people can gain access. And so I waited to, I'm trying to think if I've sent that out to our faculty or not. But I mean, that happened like 2 weeks ago. I think T-Mobile sent a message to everybody and said, hey, you need to add this additional PIN and layer of insurance. And I think if you want to be super secure, the recommendation is not to use SMS or text messaging for your two-factor, but to use a USB key or an app or something else.
Authenticator, which I have right here. Although, do you know what my authenticator is for? I'm going to highlight what a big nerd I am.
Amazon.
No, World of Warcraft.
Look at you. Wow.
I have had an authenticator for Warcraft for about a dozen years, because it was a great target for digital materials. People would hack accounts and sell them.
You're the only person I know who, that definitely, that's a litmus test.
The only person you know who admits it. I guarantee you I'm not the only person.
I know some others. Okay.
I'll do it publicly though. But
that's
although my issue with authenticators, because I had one on my phone for my WordPress, I reset my phone and my authenticator reset. Yeah. And so the only way, I had to go through WordPress again, and I got it set up. I had to set it up through SMS.
Yeah.
So there's nothing perfect, but I think the most important thing is to be aware. And the minute, because Christian was lucky, the minute he knew there was a problem, he was on the phone dealing with it.
Absolutely. Well, think about if you were on vacation, you were off the grid, I mean, that's,
And many of us, and also I happen to be home, many of us, we don't have a landline. So he was on my cell phone most of the day. But I think cybersecurity is more important than anything else we teach our kids. And I think we spend maybe 5 minutes on it. Oh, have a good password. Don't write it down. Don't share it with people.
Yeah.
No, that's.
Yeah. We've definitely said complex, unique, long passwords, the longer the better, and use a password manager. LastPass is what we ask people to. We don't tell them to, we're not going to manage that. We're not taking liability, responsibility, but strongly encouraging. And it's a matter of personal survival for me as a tech director as well, because the most charged and, tearful and near tearful conversations I have with faculty usually involve an Apple ID and a password that hasn't been put in a long time. And just, my reminder at those times, which I don't know how much it helps, is that if it wasn't hard, it wouldn't be good security. So part of the reason, Apple's making that painful is to really, try and put up some barriers and not allow people to just immediately have access. But the password manager has, in some cases, saved some major angst. And we've had, at least one case where somebody's had to start over because they didn't save it. And we're like, print this password, put this with your passport or your social security card, But I totally agree. Well, why don't we there's 2 more articles there under social media, and then we can jump to another topic. But Wired Magazine had an article on March 11th. Bad actors are using social media exactly as designed. And this was mostly a reference to, Russian hacks on our election, but saying, interestingly, we'll call them bad actors and call it hacking or, black hat negative hacking when it is, something we don't approve of, like Russia subverting our democracy. But actually, they were using the tools as they've been created and provided for everyone to, set up, hey, who would you like to target? How do you want to get your message out? And that, I was talking to our 14-year-old tonight about, these are issues we still are going to have to deal with because the platforms are trying to, tighten the screws, but fundamentally, that whole thing about Facebook, that's why it's such a profitable company, because it puts these incredible keys in your hand if you're an advertiser and you say, I want to target people who are so many miles away from this location, who have said they liked this, this, and this. I mean, have you done any Facebook advertising or played a little bit with the interface?
Yes, it's one of my special projects is social media marketing. And yeah, oh my God, it's great. I can specialize micro-targeting for advancement. I can do it for admissions. I can do it for donations. And every audience I've created is different. And so, yeah, that is great. And I can absolutely Wired hit the nail on the head, right? This is what they do, and it's what they advertise they do well, and they do it well. And it's part of the reason why we have to really consistently teach both kids and adults how to critically assess information and regularly update it. Let's face it, propaganda is nothing new in this country. It goes back to our founding fathers who used to buy their own newspapers to print material about each other. It's just faster and it's shared more quickly and people believe it. Get familiar with fact-checking websites. PolitiFact, Snopes is one of my favorites. Confirm things before you post it, especially if something you agree with it way too much or you disagree with it way too much. Those are the two things that when I see that, I'm like, okay, I better check that. I like this way, way, way too much. And just get in the habit and also read, even if it's digitally, read print news. Every day I read the Times, the Post, the Wall Street Journal, and the Herald. And by read it, I don't read them cover to cover, but I at least check out the first few pages. And it keeps me on track about the realities of what's happening in the world. And I think that's important to keep you grounded.
Absolutely. Well, the last article in that series is a Guardian piece from March the 4th, has dopamine got us hooked on tech. And this references back to the Center for Humane Technology and articles we've been seeing about breakup with Facebook and the Tristan Harris. I'm trying to remember the name of the other founder of the Center for Humane Technology, but they're the former Googlers and Facebookers and people who are, pointing out that like a slot machine, social media is engineered to take advantage of our biology, the desire we have to, not be sure what's going to happen. And then this is talking about chemicals, and that there's, chemistry happening when we open up our app and we see some likes or we don't. And I've heard some stories about, how they can sense if you're about to, turn it off or whatever, and you might get a blast of likes or, see something else that's going to be able to get your attention. So just on a personal level, how do you guys deal with that? Jason Knifer, I guess they have a deal at their home where they keep, kind of all the devices out of the bedrooms and they just, push those aside. We try to have, no screens, I guess, during mealtime. But do you have rules for yourself in terms of your screen time or because that's something talking with parents too, totally not just a kid thing. This is an everybody thing, and sometimes parents play right into it with young toddlers where they're like, oh, we're at dinner here, here's this screen, be quiet for a while.
Right. No, and in fact, I think adults have a harder time regulating their screen time than kids. What I've noticed, at least with the young people I work with every day, I try to be cautious about articles like The Guardian's. I kind of feel like smartphones are the new digital boogeyman. When we were younger, it was television, right? We all grew up being taught by the idiot box. We were supposed to be the generation that was going to be completely lost because we had been dumbed down by television. And now I have friends lament that kids don't watch television anymore. They're always on their smartphones the same way. And I'm like, that's
wow.
Yeah. I think balance is important. And I think children sometimes have trouble regulating their behavior. That's why my mom had to set a firm bedtime with me. That's why you don't give your kids dessert for, the beginning of the meal. And so it's important to set special boundaries and regulations. Face-to-face time at dinner is great. I physically turn my phone off when I go to a movie. I don't put it on silent. So I've gotten more into the habit of that because I've noticed if I have it on vibrate, it's too easy to just glance at it.
Right.
So I just turn it off.
Do
And I think those kinds of boundaries and rules are important. Now, I still sleep with it, but only because it's my white noise machine.
Hey, but our Google Home has become our Google Home Mini. We're having a thunderstorm in our bedroom every night now. So
Oh yeah, yeah. You're right. I could. We have an Alexa Dot, but that also brings up that great article you had on Alexa creepily laughing at
oh,
all.
laughing, yeah. Before we jump there, do you have any parents who are onto this? Wait until eighth. I dropped this into the show notes. It's parents to take a pledge that they're not going to give their kids a phone until eighth grade. We have a group that is it, when you say the smartphone is the new boogeyman, that's kind of it. You know, they're saying that is the problem, and we're going to pledge not to, let that in our children's lives until the last possible moment.
Right.
So
They're the new parents who don't let their kids watch TV, right? Because we had those parents when we were kids. Now, I'll admit I watched way too much TV as a child. But I can tell you, I can guarantee you, we do not have any parents in that realm, or we have some 6th and 7th graders with very sticky fingers. Because I think the challenge for a lot of parents, unfortunately, is they have trouble disconnecting from their kids. And so the kids having a cell phone, I think, is less about the kids and more about the parents too. And I think that's something for parents to really, really think about it. There were some great articles a couple months ago. That article came out about positive causative impact of kids on social media and depression, or kids on mobile phones and depression. And some of the best responses to it I saw actually addressed the fact that really we have parents who are on their tech too much and on tech instead of parenting. So the challenge is we're both in schools, right? How many you give a kid a test back, that parent knows the grade before the child walks out of the room. And I was babysitting at 12 with my parents on a landline away. I have friends who won't let their 16-year-olds babysit alone, even with a smartphone. And so I think cell phones have made parents a little too connected. And I think that's really the bigger danger. I'm not going to criticize anyone's parenting choices about delaying a smartphone for their child. Just like I can't criticize anybody who says we're not going to have our child watch TV until they're older. I think we all do the best we can. And so, and I know quite a few teachers who would applaud knowing a kid wasn't going to have a phone.
Sure. Yeah. But I think we are going to have folks resisting the move to become transhuman, which is, that's a Ray Kurzweil sort of thing. But that is, I think, where we're headed, because these things are augmenting our brains and not implanted, but they're really becoming an integral part of how we process the world and how we communicate. And so it is a good question to think about what limits we're going to put up for ourselves and what is healthy, right? Because handing the same smartphone to the 5th grader or younger, I think we've had 1st graders with phones before, it's like, wait a minute, they really should probably have something more developmentally appropriate. I think those questions are important, but it's an interesting thing that we're navigating. Part of what we're wanting to do also is just amplify other parent voices. So those extreme voices aren't the only ones, that are speaking to this issue. Because I think a more balanced approach where we're talking about, we will handicap our children if we are not equipping them with the opportunity to learn how to make good choices with these tools. I mean, even right now at homework time, some parents were talking about how they've changed their dining rooms into the collaboration space. And so they're really trying to hold on to that old day where we had one PC and it was in the kitchen and we all could look at the screen. And so anyway, it's really valuable to have parents having those conversations. After spring break, we're going to have some sessions where we're going to have students as well as parents come in and do some sort of turn parent share and talk. And I did that at our church, and it was successful. And so we're going to do that and separate those, by divisions.
I'm excited to hear how that comes out.
Yeah. I think, because that's what we've decided is the litmus test of digital citizenship success: conversation. If we are being a catalyst for conversation with teachers and students, parents and students, parents and parents, that's really what we want to try to do.
Right.
So,
and with some extreme exceptions, I think there are very few one-size-fits-all answers for digital
Absolutely.
citizenship.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Right. We can check a box. We can say we're common sense certified, but
Yeah.
are we having conversations, and do we have mechanisms in place where we can have conversations come up as they're needed? It's the just in time kind of thing to say, whoa, and then to also not overplay, because we're in that saturation point, I think, with a lot of cyber attack and a lot of, I mean, how much bigger can the attacks get beyond, Equifax now? I mean,
I think Equifax, that's it. Everyone's info's out.
Yeah, right.
And,
Absolutely.
and what was it? I had a thought and now it just went away. So keep going.
That's okay. Well, let's jump to pardon me, that AI article. So this is New York Times on March 8th. Amazon knows why Alexa was laughing at its customers. Did your Alexa laugh at you at a weird time we weren't expecting? Did you ever experience that?
I'm going to call her because she's in my living room.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. That's right. I didn't need to say her name.
Madam A.
Madam A. That's right.
One of my favorite podcasts called The Internet of Things. Madam A. No, Madam A did not laugh, but she has periodically spoken up in ways that are kind of creepy. And she does remind me that she's always listening to me. And you and I are quite informed we have an idea of what we're bringing in and what we're giving up as a result of bringing it in. I'm always a little concerned about how many people don't, but I've decided the ability and ease that she's given my life with some things makes that trade-off worth it. So for example, I live in a house built in the 1920s. So my light switches are all in the middle of the room. So to turn off a light switch, I have to turn off the light in the middle of the room and then walk in the pitch black to leave the room. And so what I've done is installed some smart switches and some smart plugs so that I can have Madam A turn on and off lights for me. That's just one example. We've got a few others. But there's some reality of what she is listening to and what she's doing with that info, because let's be honest, Amazon is not being particularly transparent with that. And they're not an altruistic company. I'm not saying they're evil. I'm saying, they're a business. They are out there to make money. And the same with Google. And so I think this is something to keep an eye on, to be mindful of, and possibly to lobby. One of the reasons I stick with Apple, not just because I'm a big Apple fangirl, but Apple has been pretty consistent on its policies about privacy. They won't give up your data. They will fight to keep it, in fact, in controversial situations. But I think it's important that we all consider what happens with our data and what rights we have over it.
Oh, absolutely. And there is an important advocacy side of that. Back to where we started with Parkland and students and student voice, I think there's really important advocacy under the realm of digital citizenship, which goes beyond net neutrality. It includes that, but it does enter into this realm of regulation. And we don't have any articles this week about I think it's the GDPR. It's this new law in Europe that's going to put constraints over where data can be saved. And, there's implications for schools with all that. But I think, just having it be the Wild West of, just make it quick. What do they call it? To put it out there and see if it breaks, or whatever the, Silicon Valley kind of thing about just, we're just out here to publish stuff and throw it against the wall and see what sticks. When you've got a platform with the reach and the power of Facebook, that can be a dangerous mantra. And so I think that there is going to be, and I know this is tough, but an appropriate role for regulation when it comes to data privacy. And some of it, I think, has to do with, like, we can today, we might not go to Equifax, but whatever, we can go to one of the credit agencies and we can say, show me your report. What do you think you have about me? Can I contest that? I can see it. And if it's incorrect, and I have a legal option to be able to contest things and get that record changed. Well, today there's this vast cloud of data that companies have collected about us, and we cannot see that. And whether we're going to CVS, Walgreens, and buying something with our, value card, and that may seem innocuous, but all of the pieces get stitched together. That information gets sold. And, now the law has changed in the United States where ISPs can sell data. There was, I'm trying to think of the name of the podcast, but they just did a study. They used a Raspberry Pi, but they were actually, they set it up to do a man-in-the-middle attack so they could capture all the data, but they were wanting to know, even with, you know, SSL encryption, et cetera, with a complete smart home, with everything, you know, blinged out as much as it could be, what kind of information would the internet service provider be able to collect about you and then potentially be able to sell? And so it really is a wild west. I mean, with cryptocurrency, it's the wild west of mining, you know, literal, you know, currencies. And I think we've got the wild west happening with data, and there's lots of money that's being made around this as well. And so sort of like as the frontier, you know, pushed west, we had civilization, you know, finally move in, and we had, you know, law and order, you know, come to town and try to establish things like due process and the rule of law. And so I think that similar kind of thing is happening. When you talked about Madam A, we only have the Google Assistant, so I'm not as attuned to it. Normally we are on the show.
No, it happens a lot.
I know. Joanna Stern, who is a columnist for the Wall Street Journal, has a fantastic video, and I put a link to it under the Amazon article. Facebook really is spying on you, not just through your microphone. I actually disagree. I mean, because they're connecting the dots. I had a weird experience that I was eating Cheetos one Saturday morning and my phone said, avoid, you know, binge eating tempting foods. I was like, what? And I had the microphone enabled on some fitness apps. And so I do believe that it heard the crunch of the Cheetos. And so it wasn't Facebook actually doing the spying, but the way in which they tap into this cloud of information. That is a great video, though. In fact, I'm going to put that on our digital citizenship website, because they have these people dressed up all in these blue masks and everything with a Facebook, you know, white F, and then holding microphones and pretending to be Madam A, etc. And so it's also a kind of thing about urban legends. You know, we have parents showing up saying, wait a minute, I heard that they're just recording everything you say. And it's like, well, no, but
yeah, because I mean, they obviously can't store all of that, right? That's way too much data to store and transfer. But what they're capable of doing and keeping, and in fact, your story reminds me, was one of the fitness apps Strava?
I don't think so.
So quite famously in January, Strava got into trouble because they're one of those fitness apps that like you can create like a jogging map with them.
Right.
And they released a secret military base. Yeah,
actually, I think several. There was some in Africa that were notable, but like, oh, hey, look at this.
Yeah, and so this heat map had been created, and Strava's an opt-in. You have to opt in to say, yeah, I want this data. But then they revealed this pretty sensitive location.
Yep.
And so I do think there needs to be some type of regulation, and stuff like that is going to make it come.
A grad student in Australia, I think, actually grabbed the data and then put that together, you know, and then released that to, you know, the chagrin of our military services. We need to tell the punchline to the article. So the New York Times Amazon article said that Madam A, they've changed the algorithm. So you can't just say Madam A laugh. You have to say something else, and then it will respond back to you, and then it will laugh.
Yeah,
so it had to
Madam A, can you laugh?
Can you laugh? That's right. That's right. So in fact, I'm writing this blog post. I haven't got it out yet, but like the smart assistant truly brings us into Harry Potter world, right? Because just as, you know, you can think of Ron and Hermione and they're learning to say Aloha Mora and say that just the right way, or when they're doing transfiguration, these other things, that's how it is today with the smart assistant, because it's an algorithm. So you must say it the correct way. And I'm listening to more of my podcasts on the Google Home, but the way that you say it, even the thunderstorm thing, we have to, sometimes I think we have to say, get thunderstorm sounds, and that works. So it's really, talk about a magical time, you know, I don't know, analogies. It's not magic, it's technology, but it is an algorithm. And so being able to speak and, you know, change what's happening in your physical environment, and then, you know, listen to podcasts, is quite the revolution.
That's awesome.
Peggy said in the chat room, she agrees with you about the Apple and privacy points. My thought on, I don't know if you'd realize this. I switched over to Android in November, and I don't know if I'm going to go back or not. And some of that has to do, well, I went to Egypt and it had to do with customs and not wanting to have data sucked off. And I didn't have a burner phone that I had left there or something.
Right.
But it also has to do with AI and my strong sense that Apple is so far behind, the HomePod and with Siri. So it's going to be interesting. Apple's definitely, hugely profitable, and they're kind of facing the innovator's dilemma, perhaps, because they're so successful with that iPhone product. But one of the most important things, I think, as an Apple fan and a watcher, is going to be able to see if they can figure out how to get their artificial intelligence to be at a level that Google and Amazon and other companies are. And you would think they could buy it, right? They've got huge loads of cash, so you'd think they'd be able to do better with that.
Well, and they did first, right, with Siri.
Right.
And I mean, I've been telling people that Apple's become the new Microsoft.
In what way? Can you elaborate on that?
Because remember, Apple had to innovate itself into survival. In fact, they survived because Microsoft paid them money to survive. And Microsoft, for the longest time, was this 800-pound gorilla. It wasn't doing anything interesting. Its machines were clunky. Its software didn't work half the time. But they owned 95% of the market and had a gajillion dollars in the bank. And now Apple is the richest company out there. Well, one of them, right? But they do have Microsoft money. They're sitting on billions of dollars, and they don't have to be as innovative to survive. Now, Microsoft has made a comeback, right? Microsoft's had some really amazing products that I've seen lately come out. Their Surface, it's actually like a computer that looks kind of like the iMac, but it slants down so that you can draft on it. It looks like a drafting table. I forget the name of it. It was incredibly impressive. Even their new Office suite, especially OneNote, has gotten great. So I don't think Apple will be down for the count. They still do some things better than everybody else. But you're absolutely right on the AI part. And I won't buy a HomePod for that reason as well.
Oh gosh. Well, yeah, and like we bought the Home Minis when they were $30, so we have 4. I mean, we're not even going to buy one HomePod, much less 2. So let's segue to Apple, though, because I dropped an article. It was a CNBC from March 5th. A cheaper MacBook Air makes perfect business sense for Apple. And there was another article I think I just saw yesterday that was echoing this in terms of the rumors, right, about what's coming out. And so the rumor is maybe $700 to $800 MacBook Air that's going to have a Retina screen. Hopefully still have, regular USB. That's been something for us at school as we refresh computers. We stuck with the Air because, my article laptop here is a regular MacBook with the USB-C, but that's not a viable option for our teachers that are still, some plugging in smart boards and USB drives and all that kind of stuff. Right. So do you, see this as having educational impact, and where are you all in terms of laptops and things like that for teachers?
Right. So we are still a Windows school.
Oh, you are?
Yes. And I don't foresee us changing that anytime soon. But in terms of the new MacBook Air, it's one of those things I've noticed since Steve Jobs died, Apple leaks a lot more than it ever did. So I saw that on Mac Rumors as well. And Mac Rumors had a much less favorable response to it. They thought that the MacBook Air needed to die. But I don't know. Until I actually see it and what it looks like, I can't make a call on that. It's interesting that even though we are a PC school, our kids get to bring their own devices. I'd say they're 90% Apple.
Do Chromebooks fit into your computing landscape at this point?
Do what?
Do Chromebooks fit into that landscape?
They do not. They're not robust enough for the things that we do. And they end up becoming way more problematic. So again, since we don't own the student devices and our grade starts at 6th grade, laptops definitely work far better for us, and real laptops.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what Apple comes out with. I'm actually more interested to see what the new iPad looks like.
Well, and I'm fascinated to see, because you mentioned Microsoft and the Surface, how Chrome continues to evolve with its touch tablet.
Right.
When I was in Ohio, I saw Eric Kurtz do a wonderful 3-hour workshop on Google writing tools. He recommended the Acer Spin 11, and it's not called capacitive, but there's another word for it where you can rest your hand on the screen and it doesn't, mark from your palm. It still knows the stylus. And I think as that technology continues to mature, Apple right now has a big bet. In addition to saying privacy and maybe not as much on the data sharing, they're saying keep the touch separate from the laptop. And I still love my iPad. I still read on it a lot, but will that be forever? And if this device could just pop off and I can have, that by itself, and I think that Microsoft and other companies are where the innovation is happening around that. And so it's going to be interesting to see, because the other rumor, actually I didn't put that link in, but is cheaper iPads, which is almost like you're going, what, Apple? But that did happen with the 5th generation iPad, right? We can get those 329 devices for 300 educationally for 32 gig. And so that's the first time that I think the price has ever gone that way. So if that price comes down further, I know that Apple is continuing to battle, Google in big ways in schools. And as someone who manages both iOS as well as Chrome, as well as Windows, as well as Mac, I mean, we're a mixed environment. I definitely, see the importance for Mac to continue to make the management side. They have not had the impetus for that because they've wanted everyone to have one-to-one. And so anyway, the shared environment with the Chromebook is just still a pretty amazingly easy
absolutely
to manage environment.
Shared with Chromebook, they do it better than anybody else. I just wish the devices were more robust and more computer-like.
Yeah.
And I'm totally with you. I really wish Apple would make this. I don't know if you played with the Surface Book. It's the high-end Surface. It costs
We've got a couple of them.
Bucks.
Yeah.
It is nice.
Have you guys had trouble? You're a Google campus?
Yes.
Have your Surface Books had any trouble with the Google file stream? Because that's been the most perplexing challenge we've had. It will disable, and we have a ticket in with Google and they say it's coming, but that's been.
You know what? I don't know that we use it enough, and we've only got a few of those Surface Books out there as a pilot.
Right.
So I'd have to go check. But the group we should talk about that off air, because the group that's using it, I don't think it's going to be using Stream very much.
Well, and we only have 3 of those devices, and I have not blasted out to everybody install FileStream, but in the last 2 weeks, Google has started to do pop-ups, much like Apple is good at doing that, right? Getting you to refresh and saying, hey, time to update your software. Google is now saying to the enterprise customer, install FileStream, because that's your solution. It works with Team Drive, et cetera. Well,
And Surface Books, if I recall, they don't play nice with just about anything, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, because that's kind of where we're at with that. So we can talk offline. It is the top of the hour. I promised you we weren't going to go an hour and a half. So we're going to need to do some Geeks of the Week. And I will go first. And if you look at you've got one in there already. My first one really quick is actually Michelle Freeland, who is our lower and middle division librarian, shared this one this morning. PC Magazine pre-order the pricey Glowforge 3D laser printer. And it's really a misnomer, because this isn't just a 3D printer. This is a laser cutter to cut wood, fabric, leather, paper, cardboard, acrylic. And the price of coming down on this thing, so from an $8,000 down to $4,000, but also the fact that it sounds like you don't need to have expensive external venting, because that's an issue with laser cutters. And if you're buying a massive one, you're going to, but it sounds like they've got some air filters that are built in that are going to enable you to perhaps be able to use it a little bit more like a 3D printer, where you're not going to have all of the external venting. But definitely the prices are eye-opening there. And I think from the maker spaces we visited, we don't have, we have 3D printers, we don't have laser cutters yet, but it really seems like if you want to outfit a makerspace and equip faculty and staff and students to be able to print quantities of things and do it at a larger scale, a laser cutter can turn things around a lot faster than a typical 3D printer, and it's an important piece within a makerspace.
Right.
So the other thing, and this just dovetails with what we're talking about with social media, is we've been having good success and pleased to use Gaggle safety management. This is something that Oklahoma City schools and a number of our area schools utilize. And it uses machine learning and artificial intelligence to be able to look at emails that are sent within the Google domain, Google documents that are shared, as well as the calendar entries. And it doesn't cover chat inside documents. And so it's not comprehensive for everything, but they've got 3 different levels. So a low-level violation might be like the use of profanity. A mid-level is going to be something that's more serious with bullying or possibly pornography. And then the 3rd level is going to be imminent harm. So that's suicide risk, violence at school. And so the notifications are set up so that your building or campus divisional administrators are notified. If it goes to that top level, they call you on the phone, and then so they've got machine algorithms that look at this, and then they have humans that look to verify and have a way, like if a student's use profanity, they can get a message that you authorize, that you say, yes, Gaggle, you can send these. So anyway, that has been great. And we were able to negotiate for pricing similar to what our friends in the public schools nearby have utilized. And that's been helpful. And so anyway, on the whole thing of social media, we want to have those conversations. We want to be aware of that. And I would just commend Gaggle to folks who are running G Suite or 365, because it will integrate with both of those platforms.
That's awesome. I'll have to take a look at that. We got rid of a system we'd been using because they wanted to go even more enterprise for businesses, and they bundled it with so many other services that we couldn't use and ballooned the price. And so I'll take a look at that myself. Okay. All right. So I actually put 3 quick things in here. One is something I've been using for Atlas a lot lately, and it's something I cannot recommend enough if you work in a team. Check out Slack. If you haven't tried it, if you're a member of Atlas, first, we do have a Slack channel, so email Sarah Hannawald to get access. But if you work on a team, if you are constantly sharing documents, you need to ping people back and forth. I have become a Slack convert, so check it out. The other thing I have for teachers, if you moved away from Google Sites because it was, let's face it, you could identify a Google site a mile away, and it was difficult to use, and it looked very dated. The new Google Sites, my students just have started using it on a project, has won me back over. I have to say, it's clean, it's fresh, it's easier to use and navigate. Definitely check it out.
Can you map a domain to it though yet? Have they added that? Do you know?
Not in the terms of, can I create my own Google site and call it like jencarey.com?
But like even a subdomain to do like wiki.domain.
You can a little bit, but again, I could put like, whatever the Google site is and put like Jen Carey's history class or something like that. Because nowhere near I think what you're looking for it to do.
Well, yeah, it's just the CNAME mapping, because that's what I'm waiting for. So as well as the tool to migrate. So,
yeah, but this is perfect for in-class assignments.
Oh, definitely.
An in-class blog, especially since you can tweak privacy settings at the page level.
Okay.
As well as at the site level, which
its own blogging platform, or just integrated with Blogger?
It has a blog page element to it. So it's not going to be truly blogging like Blogger, but trust me, play with it. You'll like it a lot.
Good.
And the new sites, it just takes you 3 seconds to get it together. It works mobily, which is the other big thing. So if you just have tablets at your school, You can edit it. You could kind of edit it on an iPad, but it was painful and awful. And it's observable easily, and students can collaborate on it, which is another thing that I really like. So most of my kids have been using Wix or Weebly because they liked it and they thought it was easy, but they couldn't collaborate. The last thing, I just want to tell people to play with this feature, because I didn't really sit down and do it until the Olympics. I think augmented reality is going to be the next pretty big thing in classrooms, not necessarily VR, but AR. You've probably been introduced to it with Pokemon at the very least. If you Snapchat, there's lots of AR. But one of the coolest things I saw was the New York Times put out a special augmented reality edition for the Olympics, where you could put the athletes right into your living room and then use your phone or tablet to zoom in and out.
What?
It was so cool. So the speed skaters, you could zoom up on their skates and look at them in detail.
What?
I'm not kidding. It was.
You could do that on your phone? You didn't have to have like a headset?
Nope, on my phone. I just used my phone and was like, "Woo, look at the guy's speed skates." I'm not lying. So there's a lot of different augmented reality tools out there. Like IKEA lets you put augmented furniture into your living room. So you have a space, you want to see how a chair will look there, you can do that.
That's great.
There's more augmented history walks coming out. Now those tend to be limited to bigger cities like New York, LA, San Francisco, and places that have a lot of history. So you'll have them in London. But the reason I want to point that out is, one is I think the consumption apps that are out there already have some great features. But if you are looking for that next level of coding to bring to your classroom, because we have kids who take the AP Computer Science in 10th grade. And what do you do with those kids after, right? And the AP Computer Science is, let's face it, for them, just a formality because they're well beyond it. I think if you have that group of advanced kids who want to play with something, augmented reality, and there are tools and engines for you to create in it. Awesome. So check it out, play with it. Just go to I know the iPhone has a setting. I'm sure the Android store has a setting where you can just sort by apps for augmented reality and see what's there. I will say it's not going to be available on all phones and all tablets. You have to have a pretty good camera to use it, but and a pretty good chip in your phone. But it's pretty cool. I'm not like the New York Times thing. I don't get blown away by tech stuff very often. And the New York Times thing, I was like, oh my God,
yeah,
this is life-changing. So play with some augmented reality. I don't think you're going to be able to get anything ready to plug and play tomorrow, but I think that's the next big thing.
Sounds good. Well, right. We've gone a little bit past the top of the hour. We'll wrap up. We want to thank Peggy and Scott for being live in our chat room and sharing links. And we want to encourage you all to come back next week. We'll be back on Wednesday night, and special guest will be the amazing Carl Hooker from Austin, Texas. And I'm excited to get to connect with Carl. And we'll be, I think, at our regular time, 9 p.m. Central. So please check out our show notes. Check out our links at edtechsr.com/links. Jen, where can people follow you, connect with you if they'd like to keep learning with you?
Sure. I think the best thing would be on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @thejencarey, 1N. You can look at my blog, indianagen.com. I have not been as active on blogging as I should be. I've just been swamped, although you're absolutely right, Wes. I should write something about reporting harassment on Twitter.
That's a great post. Yeah.
That's a great topic. So send me topics I should write, because I think that's what really happens is I just don't have the time to sit down and brainstorm as much as I should. I should make that time. Yeah. But the Jen Carey on Twitter is the best way to find me.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you all so much, or thank you, Jen, so much for joining us. I'm W. Fryer on Twitter, speedofcreativity.org. I've actually, pardon me, got a podcast published. It was like my longest one ever, an hour and 20 minutes, but it was 3 different interviews. And so periodically, getting some posts, and definitely check out the digital citizenship website, digcit.us. And if you've got students that want to contribute, we've got a contribution form there, and would love to, get those conversations going and encouraging collaboration across districts, because there's great curriculum out there. Common Sense Media, other groups have, fantastic things, but there's also just going to be topics that will come up that we need to talk about. And media, short videos are a nice way to set the stage. And then with some suggested questions, we feel like that's a good format, hopefully, to encourage more teachers to take on these topics and to get the conversation going with students and parents as well. Not just a one-way delivery of, we know how to keep you safe, stay away from strangers. That is important to talk about, but there's so many more aspects that we all need to be talking about, because we're probably not living, either in as much balance and wellness and all that with our screens, or because our, digital hygiene with our passwords and all those kind of things need to be improved. And
right.
So anyway, thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.